The Midnight Dispatch is a fictional podcast inspired by real people and events. Characters have been dramatized for entertainment purposes in artistic exploration. This is not a documentary. It is a work of imagination and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Scene 1. A most curious invitation. A little more than a year ago, before the alleyways whispered of blood and symbols, London brimmed with a different kind of spectacle. The gaslights burned brighter then, their playful glow casting shadows more theatrical than sinister, and Oscar Wilde's attentions were drawn not to Jack the Ripper, but to invitation and intrigue. This was a time of wonder, of showmanship, of curiosities paraded through fairs and carnivals. There were no murders or mysteries or troubling newspaper articles, only a letter from an old friend whose peculiar flair for the uncanny would raise his curiosity like a big-top circus tent. The morning arrives with a reluctant stretch of light over the rooftops of Chelsea and a modest drizzle tapping politely against the window panes of Oscar's study, hardly enough to dampen the spirits of a man who found rain romantic and gloom rather fashionable. Wilde, swathed in a burgundy silk robe, lounges amidst an opulent nest of cushions and discarded manuscripts. A silver tray rests beside him, bearing a half-eaten pear, a lukewarm pot of tea, and, most curiously, a letter of extravagant design that would have scandalized any sensible postman. It is a riot of color, peacock feather borders, calligraphy as flourished as a debutante's sigh, and embossed in the boldest gilt the unmistakable signature of P.T. Barnum.
Oh, Barnum, there are stage curtains more subtle than your stationery.
He breaks the wax seal, shaped like a lion's roaring head, and unfolds the letter with theatrical care.
Dearest Oscar, the world feels far too drab without a touch of your peculiar genius. I am bringing the greatest show on earth to London, miracles, marvels, and mischief alike, and I'd be most honoured to have you as my guest of distinction. The performance will be unlike anything Europe has seen, and I'm told you never could resist a good show, or a better scandal. Oh, and I'm acquiring an elephant while in town, a particularly philosophical one, I'm told. You simply must meet him. More importantly, I've made the acquaintance of someone extraordinary, a gentleman with a curiosity not unlike yours, only tinged with a few shadows and secrets I believe you might relish. He insists I make the introduction. He's even promised to behave. Consider this your summons to the improbable, Oscar. London is about to remember what wonder feels like. Respectfully yours in spectacle and spirit, Phineas Taylor Barnum.
Wilde sets the letter down with a glint in his eye, a fusion of amusement and intrigue that rarely failed to precede trouble.
An elephant. A mystery man. And Barnum himself?
He swings his legs from the divan and plants his feet on the parquet with the finality of a stage cue.
So the showman has come. London will forget herself now, trade her secrets for spectacle, her soul for a song and a brass band. She'll dress in borrowed light and call it wonder, laugh too loudly at things she doesn't understand. The old poets will go unread, the salons will grow quiet, and truth will be repackaged as novelty sold by the yard beneath a striped tent.
Scene 2. Wilde among the Phantasmagoria. The circus unspools before Wilde like a delirious dream stitched in scarlet and smoke. Massive striped tents strained against their moorings, groan under the weight of brass music and public astonishment. Steam from roasted chestnuts mingle with sawdust and perfume, swirling into an air as thick with pretense as it is with anticipation. He moves through the chaos alone, a large but fragile figure in emerald velvet and soft-spoken disdain. Everywhere around him, illusion clamors for attention. A fire breather exhales a furious ribbon of flame that dances too close to the hem of Wilde's coat. Oscar mutters dryly to himself.
Careful. I've no interest in becoming a martyr to theatrical excess.
A sword swallower arches his neck beneath the glint of a dozen blades. Children squeal. Adults hold their breath. Wilde merely tilts his head and continues commenting to no one in particular.
There's something terribly modern about a man risking death for fleeting applause. Perhaps he'd prefer an editorial column. It's less hazardous, but equally thankless.
He pauses before a contortionist, twisting herself into geometry that defies muscle or grace. Oscar clutches his cane like a judge's gavel.
Astonishing. She's bent herself so far backward, I dare say she's glimpsed her own credibility.
Yet beneath the sarcasm, his eyes linger on the artistry. Each act is gaudy, yes, but deliberate, crafted. The illusions are paper thin, but the craft is undeniable.
This magician appears to have vanished not his rabbit, but the concept of rehearsal.
A barker shouts over the din, directing the crowd toward the man who walks on air, and Wilde follows the swell of people until the crowd gives way to a performer suspended by wires so fine they vanish in the lantern light. The man twists mid-air, unnatural, and for a moment, just a moment, even Wilde's tongue stills before whispering to himself,
Beautiful fakery is still quite beautiful.
and yet, for all his biting wit, there is admiration beneath the mockery. He watches the fire dancer's ritual with genuine awe as flame illuminates sweat-slicked skin and smoke draws fleeting halos above her head. He pauses at a marionette performance staged by a trio of masked children, catching the aching beauty in a puppet's bowed head. And when a blindfolded swordsman walked barefoot across broken glass to the tune of a violin, Wilde found himself clapping, softly, sincerely. He wanders on. Somewhere, a calliope churns out a cheerful dirge. Painted jesters cavort on stilts. A juggler tosses flaming clubs into the evening sky and catches them with perilous ease. The chaos consumes itself as the night steadies in a state of wonder and excitement. Wilde, unhurried, strolls deeper still into the heart of the spectacle, not for the performances, not even for the marvels, but for the feeling creeping in like twilight behind the eyes that something, someone, was waiting. And Oscar naturally intends to arrive fashionably early. Scene 3. A Showman's Delight. The tent that houses the elephant is quieter than the others, its canvas walls muffling the distant clamor of drums and laughter. Inside, the space was dim. Lanterns hang low, as though uncertain whether to illuminate majesty or menace. The air is heavy with the musky scent of hay, incense, and expectation. Oscar Wilde steps through the flap and pauses. There, in the golden half-light, stands the elephant, massive, poised, and eerily still, his eyes dark and unreadable, one ear twitching slightly, yet calm. He bears a saddle adorned with sapphires and gold thread, too ornate even for royalty, and he regards Wilde with the inscrutable patience of a spirit trapped in flesh. Oscar has never seen a creature so entirely enormous, and for a moment, even his massive sense of self-importance is humbled by the creature's magnificent yet peaceful presence.
Oscar, by Jupiter's juggling ghost, you do know how to make an entrance, even when it's me expecting you.
His own name booms like a drum roll before the act. P.T. Barnum emerges from the shadows, arms flung wide, his coat a chaos of brocade, tassels, and tailored bravado. His grin is a crescent moon carved from showbiz varnish. Wilde allows himself a smile, small but sharpened at the edges.
And you, dear Barnum, have once again managed to turn a simple menagerie into a cathedral of delusion.
Barnum laughs, a sound that rattles the lantern hooks. He sweeps beside Oscar, placing a firm hand on his shoulder.
My boy. Delusion is just another word for undiscovered truth. And vaudeville? Vaudeville is not deception, it's a matter of arrangement. A mastery of sightlines. When you control the frame, you control the eyes. And when you control the eyes,
He tapped Wilde's temple twice, not gently.
you own the mind.
Barnum stands framed by velvet drapes, every inch the showman, even in stillness. His ringmaster's coat is a riot of crimson and gold, broad shoulders padded for presence, tails sweeping behind him like a curtain call. The embroidery along the lapels glints in the low light, intricate as filigree, worn smooth in places by years of use. Beneath it, a black satin waistcoat hugs his barrel chest, the buttons straining slightly with each breath. His cravat is tied with theatrical precision, a deep wine-red knot nestled against a starched white collar. He's a man of compact stature, but he carries himself with the gravity of someone used to bending rooms around his will. His face is round and weathered, cheeks flushed with exertion or drink, the skin creased from decades of smiling for strangers. A neatly trimmed mustache rides his upper lip, and his sideburns, thick and silvered, frame a pair of shrewd, pale blue eyes that miss nothing. His hair, once dark, is now a swept-back silver mane, lacquered into place with pomade and pride. His boots are polished to a mirror shine, heels slightly raised, giving him just enough lift to meet Wilde's gaze without tipping the balance of power. One gloved hand rests on a cane topped with a brass lion's head. The other is extended in greeting, fingers curled like he's offering a deal rather than a handshake. He gestures broadly to the elephant.
He is not a trick. He is belief in motion, and that's more powerful than any sermon or science.
Wilde arches an eyebrow, still watching the animal as it shifts its weight back and forth, paying very little attention to the two men.
You make it sound rather ecclesiastical. Should I genuflect or simply tip the handler?
Barnum chuckles and leans in, voice lower.
He was brought from Madras by a man who claimed he dreams in languages no one speaks anymore. You wouldn't believe the trouble he caused them. He had a stubborn reputation and refused to be tamed by even the most talented handlers. But me? He took one look at me and I swear, Oscar, he knelt. I like to think he recognized a fellow wonder. His name is Jumbo.
He turns his grin back on Wilde, and in the flicker of firelight, the showman's bravado almost flickers.
Besides, I didn't summon you here just to admire the pachyderm. There's someone I need you to meet. He's, particular. Curious. I'd say troubled, but I believe you thrive on that sort of nuance.
Oscar keeps his gaze on the elephant a moment longer. Jumbo blinks, slowly, deliberately.
Well, lid on, O ringmaster of reality. Let us discover what fresh marvel awaits.
Not now, my boy. He's preparing for the big finale. Timing, as they say, is everything.
With a knowing grin and a half bow, he sweeps the tent flap closed behind him.
Enjoy a bit more of the midway. Let its wonders rattle your sense of certainty a while longer. I'll meet you backstage once the curtain falls.
Oscar is left once more in the quiet company of the elephant, who shifts his weight with a sound like distant thunder. His eyes, slow and deliberate, follow Oscar as he turns to leave. Wilde continues talking to himself as he steps back out into the spectacle of the midway.
Poor brute, stolen from the vastness of Africa, paraded in London, sold for thunderous applause. A monarch in chains, traded for tickets and grins.
Scene 4. An Unfortunate Fortune. The circus has dulled into something quieter by the time Wilde approaches the fortune-teller's tent. The air hangs weighty with candle smoke and charred sugar, and the laughter that once echoed so confidently through the grounds now seems to fray at the edges. A crooked sign swung above the tent's entrance, etched with a single word in fading gold. Truths. He sweeps inside with the lazy arrogance of a man expecting to be entertained. The interior is dim but not theatrical. No curtains dripping with faux mysticism, no shelves of cheap crystal or clattering bones. Just a circular table, and behind it, a woman unlike the rest of the carnival's costume cast. No veil, no bangles, no painted crescents on her brow. She sits as still as dusk itself, the flame of a single oil lamp trembling in her dark eyes as if it had just realized it was alone. She does not ask his name. Oscar opens his mouth with a witticism already half-formed, something about destiny and discount pricing. But he doesn't speak it. She is watching him too closely, not as the others had, not like an admirer, a skeptic, or even a performer recognizing another. She watches him like one watches something that might break. She doesn't move. She doesn't blink. Then, in a voice that lands like velvet soaked in ink,
"The great escape is coming, not only for him, for both of you."
No embellishment, no reading of palms or cards, just the blunt ambiguity of a few phrases. Wilde blinks, a flicker of stillness breaking across his face like a skipped heartbeat. Then, almost reflexively, the wit returns.
How delightfully vague. If I happen to vanish before intermission, do send a refund to my estate.
You pretend to mock the trap of destiny only after you've stepped in it.
And you pretend not to know my name, yet you speak as though you've seen inside my diary.
I do not need your name. I've seen the stain on your shadow, Mr. Wilde. It's not what follows you. It's when.
Oscar's fingers tap once against his cane, too precise to be idle.
And what shall I do with such a charming premonition? Alter my fate by refusing an encore?
Fate does not knock, Mr. Wilde. It lingers. And you, with all your clever turns and theatrical bluster, have already opened the door. What stands beyond it now is not choice, but unfolding. You've long spun tales for others, glittering, scandalous, profound. But your own? It stirs now. Ink barely dry. The world may applaud the playwright with roses and reviews. Yet the shadows, they are writing a different name.
They lock eyes for a heartbeat too long.
Well, thank you for your hospitality, and the riddle dressed as doom. Do let me know if I reappear in your next vision, especially if it's under better lighting.
Oscar stands and makes his way to the tent flap.
You'll know it when the lights go out.
Wilde hesitates, just for a second, then vanishes through the curtain, his silhouette slipping back into the noise and revelry like ink into water. Outside, the calliope resumed its brittle tune. Wilde steps back into the light and bustle of the midway, but the air seems changed, just a fraction colder, as though the future has brushed past him on its way to the stage. And the ominous fortune of escapes and darkness and unavoidable fate clings to his spine like breath on a mirror. Scene 5. The chamber below. He had not appeared in the posters, no billboards bearing his name, no barkers shouting of impossible escapes. And yet, as the orchestra dips into silence and the lanterns dim to a reverent hush, the name passes through the crowd like an exhale. Houdini. Wilde, seated in a shadowed corner of the private box, narrows his eyes, not in recognition, but in interest. The crowd, once raucous, stills. Their attention turns toward the stage with the reverence usually reserved for execution or epiphany. At the center stands a tall glass chamber, its water already filled, still and waiting. Then Houdini emerges, barefoot, bare-chested, shackled at the wrists and ankles. His frame is compact but sinewy, muscles taut like coiled wire beneath pale, freckled skin. His dark hair clings damply to his forehead, and his eyes, sharp, deep-set, almost feral, scan the crowd with a flicker of something unreadable. His movements are unhurried, ritualistic. He nods once to the crowd, then turns his gaze inward toward the water. Wilde leans forward, arms folded, expression unreadable.
No flourish. How terribly sincere.
Houdini climbs the small platform, exhales once, and submerges himself. The chamber seals with a metallic groan. Locks slide into place. For a time, there is only stillness. Then tension, slow, creeping, coils around the silence. Minutes pass like hours. The water clouds faintly, not with ink or trickery, but shadow. A bloom from within, a drift, a distortion. Wilde's brow furrows. The tank gleams center stage, tall and cruel. Houdini hangs suspended in silent defiance of time, arms bound, chains glinting like jewelry for the condemned. Then, something goes wrong. A soft spark snaps from the spotlight rig. Gasps. The announcer stammers from the wings. He shouts, "That's not supposed to happen. Get up there, now." Backstage figures scramble into view. Wilde rises from his seat slowly, heartbeat ticking like a bad poem. The water in the tank, once still, is now churning, not with flair, but with friction. Someone rushes with a crowbar. Another climbs the ladder, fiddling with the rig. How long has it been? Another shout from backstage. He's not signaling. He's supposed to signal. Inside the tank, Houdini is nowhere to be seen. The water's too murky now. Some dye or prop trick gone awry, perhaps. But Wilde doesn't believe in simple accidents. Not anymore. The crowd begins murmuring with a low rumble that builds with creeping panic. No human could possibly hold his breath this long. Shouts from the audience now, anger and hysterics. A woman shrieks in terror. Somewhere a child sobs. A loud click, then another. Then it happens. The chains burst apart with a metallic shriek. The water erupts in a geyser of pressure and steam. The tank rocks violently, but does not break. And Houdini launches free. Bare-chested and gleaming under flame glow, chains clattering like applause. He lands on one knee, breathless, soaked, shaking, but alive. The stagehands stare as if witnessing a resurrection. The crowd doesn't clap immediately. They're stunned. Then, one by one, a roar rises, thunderous, relieved, triumphant. The crowd is still roaring as Houdini stands soaked and trembling, chains like serpents at his feet. Stagehands retreat. Wilde remains seated, eyes narrowed, not at the magician, but at the curtain behind him, the one that begins to rustle. A trumpet blares from somewhere unseen. Then, a booming, unmistakably American voice.
Ladies, gentlemen, lovers of peril and spectacle. Tonight you have not witnessed an act. You have witnessed a threshold.
Wilde remains still, one hand to his chest, watching Barnum step forward, arms raised to embrace the room.
And with that, dear friends, the curtain closes. Not on wonder, but on tonight. You've been bold, you've been brimming with belief, and for that, we tip our hats. Remember, the extraordinary is never far, if only you're willing to look twice.
Barnum bows deeply, then with a grin wide enough to sell stars to the sky.
Good night, London. Dream well, and dream big.
Good night, London. How quaint. As if dreams come when summoned and not creeping uninvited beneath one's door. But no matter. Even showmen must sleep, though they dine first on applause.
He folds his gloves slowly, gaze lingering on Houdini, still dripping, still trembling. Wilde exhales, the ghost of a grin tugging at his lip.
And if illusion is the currency tonight, I dare say someone just broke the bank.
Scene 6. Smoke, mirrors, and men of iron. Backstage is quieter now, tents breathing in their final sighs, applause still echoing faintly through the canvas like the memory of thunder. Wilde wanders through ropes and shadows until the scent of sawdust gives way to something colder, metal, steam, and iron. And there stands Barnum, beaming like a man who'd just sold dreams to the dead.
Oscar! Tell me, did it not give you chills? And I don't mean the tank.
Oscar stands, arms folded with a dry expression.
Chills suggest surprise, Barnum. I assure you I came fully insulated.
He steps aside. Houdini is there.
Then allow me to introduce the storm itself.
Still damp, dressed now in black, as unassuming as a shadow chosen to linger. He says nothing, only nods once.
Mr. Wilde, Harry Houdini, the only man I've ever met who can bind impossibility, swallow it whole, and spit out theater.
Wilde steps forward and bows his head slightly.
Mr. Houdini, I must commend you. Most men seek freedom as an abstraction. You make a habit of proving it with wrists chained and lungs held hostage.
Freedom's only meaningful when something wants to keep you.
Ah, a prisoner with flair. How terribly modern.
They say Wilde escapes through wit and Houdini through water. What a duet we might see, if either ever lost control.
I confess I find your entire act rather thought-provoking, but not for the reasons you might hope. You escape beautifully, but what I wonder is, do you ever question what you're escaping to?
Harry shrugged slightly.
Air. Always air.
Pragmatic. But then, water has no memory. You pass through it without a trace and it lets you believe you've changed. Tell me, when you submerge, are you the one bound, or is it the water obeying you?
If I drowned, would it make you feel clever?
If you drowned, I'd feel vindicated, and very annoyed not to have asked more questions.
Barnum clapped his hands, delighted, as though he'd just launched a hot air balloon powered entirely by ego and subtext.
Gentlemen, if intellect were oil, I believe I'd just struck a well. Care to join me for dinner?
Only if Houdini promises not to vanish between courses.
Only if Wilde promises not to talk through all of them.
The three men laughed like old friends, their voices echoing with ease and mischief. For Wilde, the moment conjures memories of glittering parlors and aristocratic salons, where wit was currency and conversation a duel. Here, amid velvet shadows and theatrical bravado, he had found his element. At last, Oscar Wilde was truly at home.
A remarkable trick, of course. Though one wonders, was it only a trick? So I have to ask. Was the gasp I heard from the audience genuine peril or expertly brewed illusion?
A touch of both, I suppose. The rig misfired, the tank fogged too early, and I lost 15 seconds to a faulty clasp. Nothing fatal, just dramatic inconvenience.
Barnum, still beaming with happiness.
And look what it bought you! Nothing sells suspense like the scent of failure. You dangled death, and they ate it up with silver spoons.
Or they gorged on catastrophe, mistaking it for courage. There's a difference. One feeds the heart, the other feeds the box office.
Houdini doesn't respond immediately, just checks his wrists, examining faint red lines from the shackles.
I never faked the danger. The chain was real, the water cold, the silence deafening. If I faltered, it wouldn't have been applause that met me. It'd be a eulogy.
But you didn't falter. You escaped. That, my dear Houdini, makes all the difference. And if the rafters groaned and sparks flew, well, let London think the devil fiddled with the fuse. All the better. We peddle wonder, Oscar, and the finest wonders always flirt with ruin.
Wilde chuckles, walking toward the tank.
You know, Barnum just bought an elephant. Put it in a cage to one day make it a legend. Tonight, Harry, you brought a cage of your own.
Indeed. The cage is just part of the act, though. I control the shackles with practice and rehearsal. I wonder then, when the audience can no longer tell the difference, who are we saving? Them or ourselves?
A moment of silence. Then Wilde straightens his coat and smiles.
Gentlemen, if art imitates life, and life imitates madness, tonight may have been a masterpiece.
Wilde turned on polished heels, the echoes of laughter fading behind him, replaced by the low hum of stagehands disassembling spectacle. The scent of lamp oil and wet velvet clung to the air. Ghosts of triumph and danger mingled like perfume and pipe smoke in some decadent dream. He paused at the wings, gaze drifting to the stage, still damp with triumph. The tank looms, quiet now, glass slick with condensation.
And yet here, another creature, willfully shackled, Harry Houdini, the voluntary prisoner, not for punishment, but performance. He climbs into the coffin and calls it art, drowns for a breathless encore.
A pause. Wilde's gloved fingers tighten, pensive.
Is it nobler to escape one's cage or to build it yourself and paint it gold? Either way, both leave footprints in the sawdust.
Good evening, listeners. Welcome to the Midnight Dispatch. I'm your host, Joe, and this was episode 3, The Showman's Gambit. Before we get into things, I'd like to just give a huge thank you to all of you who have tuned in and followed the show. If you like what you've heard so far, do me a favor and go over to Apple iTunes, drop a positive review. It only takes a sec and it really helps get it in front of more people. Also, feel free to email me at themidnightdispatch@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I will read every email and I'll respond to as many as I can. I'm also streaming the episodes now on the Midnight Dispatch YouTube channel if that's something that interests you. This episode was a carnival of contradictions, spectacle and sincerity, illusion and intimacy, performance and peril. We step back in time before the murders, before the arcane sigils and the magic and mystery that's happening in London, and we followed Oscar Wilde into the velvet-draped chaos of a traveling circus. But beneath the sawdust and sequins, there were some hints of darker foreshadowing. So what was real? What was fake? Let's talk about it. P.T. Barnum was very real and very complicated. Born in 1810, he was a showman, entrepreneur, and self-styled, quote, prince of humbugs. He made his fortune exhibiting curiosities, both real and fabricated, the General Tom Thumb to the Fiji Mermaid. He co-founded what would become the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, branding it the greatest show on earth. But Barnum was also a master of narrative manipulation. He blurred the lines between truth and entertainment, often exploiting people under the guise of marvel. Our version of Barnum leans into that duality, charming, theatrical, and just a little bit dangerous. Jumbo the elephant was also real. Barnum purchased him from the London Zoo in 1882, and the public was scandalized. Jumbo was beloved in Britain, and his departure caused a national outcry. Barnum, of course, turned the controversy into publicity gold. In our story, Jumbo becomes more than just a beast. He's a symbol of spectacle, captivity, and the uneasy trade between wonder and exploitation. Harry Houdini was still a rising performer in the early 1890s, but his obsession with escape, illusion, and spiritualism would soon make him a legend. His appearance here is fictionalized, but grounded in his real-life persona, a man who risked everything to control the narrative of danger, and who later spent years debunking the very mystics he once admired. So what was imagined? The meeting between Wilde, Barnum, and Houdini is pure invention, but emotionally plausible. Wilde's disdain for cheap spectacle, Barnum's hunger for attention, and Houdini's quiet intensity creates a triangle of tension that feels mythic, even if it never happened. The fortune teller's prophecy and the malfunctioning during Houdini's act are fictional, but they serve a deeper purpose, to suggest that even the most controlled illusions can be pierced by fate. Wilde's encounter with the fortune teller marks a turning point. His wit falters, his mask slips. For the first time, he's not just observing the performance, he's part of it. The tank escape gone wrong is a dramatized version of Houdini's real-life stunts, which were often dangerous, but meticulously rehearsed. In our version, the danger becomes a metaphor. What happens when the line between illusion and reality blurs too far? So a couple of themes to watch. Performance as identity. Wilde, Barnum, and Houdini all perform for survival, but each in a different register. Wilde performs intellect. Barnum performs belief, Houdini performs control. But what happens when the performance becomes the prison? Another theme would be the cost of wonder. This episode asks what we trade for amazement. Is it truth, dignity, safety? Wilde's final line, is it nobler to escape one's cage or to build it yourself and paint it gold, lingers, and it really picks up on this theme some. So next week, we return to the darker alleys of London. But for now, let the calliope fade, the velvet curtains fall, and the applause echo just a moment longer. Until then, dream well and dream big. Good night, everyone.